Hey, happy Cinco de Mayo. It's Barb. I'm here with 4 recommended reads for you this month. All of them are good. 3 I think you're going to want to run out and buy. One is a nonfiction book, which really only works if you're totally into the jazz age. But let's start from the top and talk about the 4 books I want to tell you about today. The first one up is Two Wars and a Wedding, or like I like to call it, Two Weddings and a War. I have mislabeled this I don't know how many times. Lauren Willig is an auto-buy for me. She has been since she wrote The Ashford Affair several years ago. Her stories are always just, she managed to find that historical period that you don't know a lot about and you want to know more, and but you didn't realize it. She always finds a rather unusual time period. In this case, it's the Greco-Turkish conflict in the Spanish-American War. I knew nothing about the Greco-Turkish War, and the Spanish-American War. I knew about the San Juan Hill and Teddy Roosevelt, stuff like that, but not all the details. This is the story of Betsy Hayes. She's an idealistic young Smith graduate who goes to Greece in 1896 to try and break into the archaeology field. She's one of those bang on the door until you knock it down kind of people, and it's 1896, so you can imagine how it went. Women did not do archaeology back then, and the doors were shut to her, but she keeps trying. What happens instead is that she ends up becoming a Red Cross nurse. She falls in love. There's very, very, very tragic things happen to her. And that's juxtaposed with a timeline that's 2 years ahead, where she's going to San Juan, or to Cuba, to try and stop her best friend from becoming a Red Cross nurse and kind of basically scarring herself for life the way Betsy did. Of course, the reason she's doing it isn't all that altruistic. I mean, that's part of her reason, but she's got secrets that tie back to when she was in Greece. And I don't want to spoil it, but when you find out, she goes from being kind of pushy to very, very sympathetic. The thing I like best about Lauren's books, though, are her dialogue. She has a way of making everything very sparkling, very witty. Her characters are all very smart. And the amount of research that went into this book astounded me. There were so many details. I mean, I literally felt like I was plunked down into Cuba during this war. I had no idea the things that happened. I certainly didn't have any idea how pig-headed the American army was when it came to letting the Red Cross nurses help them. A lot of men died needlessly because they didn't want female nurses in the battlefield. It's a wonderful book. If the name Betsy Hayes sounds familiar at all, that's because she was in Band of Sisters. This is a prequel of sorts. You don't need to have read Band of Sisters, but Betsy Hayes goes on to form the Smith College Relief Corps, which went to went to France in World War I. Really recommend this book. I think you'll enjoy it. So next up, though, you're going to love this one. I have been waiting for Kate Morton to come out with a book for the last couple of years. Homecoming did not disappoint. It's the story of a middle-aged journalist who goes back to Australia when her grandmother becomes terminally ill or seriously ill. And when she's there, she discovers there's a family secret, and it involves a horrific crime that happened 60 years earlier. So she decides to start putting together pieces of the family mystery that she didn't know. And what she realizes is that the stories that she was told from her childhood and the truth aren't one and the same. I love books like that. I love books where you think you know where you're heading, and then all of a sudden it just turns 180 degrees and nothing is what you thought. That's what Morton does in this book. About halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, a point of view comes in that changes everything. And you're suddenly like, oh, what you thought we were seeing isn't. She kept me guessing right up to the end what happened with the mystery. I had no idea. She tells it in kind of an interesting way, because rather than doing flashbacks or anything like that, she does it in kind of a book format. So you're frequently reading passages of this supposed true crime novel that was written about the crime 60 years before, but it works. And the story itself is heartbreaking. There's a sense of sadness all the way through it. It's almost like a heavy feel to the writing. It's beautifully written. I could not put it down. I can't say enough good things about it. So it's the kind of book that's going to stick with you for a long time. So I recommend reading it. And then after you're done, if you're looking for something a little lighter, this weekend's Coronation Week. We all know that King Charles is getting crowned tomorrow, May 6th, excuse me. If you're looking for something to read to keep that spirit alive, I adored Coronation Year. It's actually not about Queen Elizabeth's coronation. It's about a group of people who live in a hotel that happens to be on the coronation route. And they're three people who were very broken by World War II, and they're struggling to heal themselves. And the book is about them finding footing and finding a fresh start after the war. And it's just sweet. It's very heartwarming. You get a warm fuzzy through the whole thing. These people feel so real and ordinary, and you can picture them picking up after the war. And they're like everyone else in Britain that was doing that. It reflects the mood that was in England in 1953. They were very much ready for a fresh start. They had this beautiful young queen who they all loved. And this book captures that feeling very, very well. I felt good after I read it. I was happy after I read it. It's very hopeful. It's about healing. It's very optimistic and forward thinking. And it's a great book to read if you're looking to curl up this weekend or curl up over the week and just want something happy. I recommend that. And then my last book is for you nonfiction fans. It's called Magnificent Rebel by Anne de Courcy. It's about Nancy Cunard in Jazz Age Paris. And I knew nothing about Nancy Cunard. I recognized the Cunard name because they owned a lot of the ocean liners, and she was the heir to their fortune. She herself was a poet. She apparently was the muse and inspiration for, I don't know how many artists during the Jazz Age. And she was also a spoiled brat. She was an alcoholic. She had no regard for fidelity, but she also then turned around later in her life and fought for equal rights and fought for equality for women, African Americans. She campaigned against racism. She campaigned against fascism. She worked for the resistance. So she was a study in complete opposites. It's really interesting. And I definitely wasn't bored reading this book. I found her to be fascinating in just how many different ways that how many different sides of her personality they were. She's not super likable, yet she did do some amazing, great things. So if you're into the Jazz Age or the Lost Generation, or just like a good biography, this is a good book for you. I will put buy links in for all these books in the show notes. Again, I really recommend Two Wars and a Wedding, Homecoming, and Coronation Year. I think you guys will really enjoy it. In the meantime, have a great Cinco de Mayo. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next month. And come back on Tuesday. Donna and I are going to be talking about Only the Beautiful, which I'm reading now, and I can tell you that next month I'll be raving about it because Susan Meisner is a genius. So, all right, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.